Are you frustrated because your progress has stagnated? Maybe you're not quite there right now, but you know what stagnation feels like, and you want to make sure that you continue making progress and you avoid the problem that I'm going to address in this video. You're in the right place, so let's get into it. Progress is probably one of the most motivating feelings we experience. If you think about it, when you see progress, just thinking about it especially like if you put it in a certain area of your life, like your career, when you think about making progress in your career, that can be motivating enough to set a lofty goal and just really go for it. And when we see progress, I mean, it's one of the best things in the world. We just feel so motivated. So it's also no surprise that when your progress drops, so does your motivation. And it's really hard to bring it back up because we know we got to get our motivation back up again if we want to see more progress. But because we're not seeing progress, we're lacking in motivation. But we can fix this right now. Before I jump right into it, if I were to come right out right now and tell you the truth about what's really blocking your progress, you wouldn't even believe me. In fact, you might even get offended and jump off of this video. And I am not kidding. People have gotten angry at me for telling them the truth that I'm going to elaborate on in this video. And what I'm going to expose is something we all lean on, and I'm guilty of it too. And some of us even feel dependent on it. Even worse, some people actually think of it as something that's sacred, but in actuality, it functions more like a virus that is blocking your progress. So I want to start off by how I first sort of became aware of this problem. And I've talked about this in the past, so I'm not revealing anything new. I used to be single and in the dating scene, and I had a wingman, and I had a few different wingmen. And one of them was this guy who had graduated Harvard. And he was a very smart guy, an entrepreneur. And I was just talking to him. We just met early in the night before we went to do our thing, and we were just talking. We're just kind of catching each other up on each other's lives, and I was kind of giving my monologue on what was going on with me, and he just stopped me and he said, "Hey, bro," he actually said that, "Bro, you need to stop talking like that." And I was just like, "Well, what do you mean?" He's like, "The way you're talking, you're totally going to wreck your progress. You're totally going to keep yourself from progressing if that's the way you're thinking." Now, I'm the NLP guy, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm the one who listens to words, and I'm very cautious about how I talk to myself or I talk to other people because your words are the clues about how you're thinking. And so I asked him to, like, tell me more. What are you getting from what I'm saying that is causing you to say that? And I'm going to circle back to the story. Of course, I'm going to finish the story, but I want you to think about, what do you reach for when things aren't going well? And more specifically with, we're talking about progress here. So when you're not progressing and it feels like there's nothing you can do to change that, because we've been in those places where it seems like it doesn't matter how much effort we put into something. It doesn't matter how much we learn. We can't seem to move the dial. We can't seem to move that needle. It feels hopeless. So what do you reach for when that happens? Well, I kind of gave it away, right? You reach for hope because it feels terrible to feel hopeless. So, what is hope? I actually Googled it and I have the definition right here. Hope is a feeling of expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen. So, when we hope for something, we're sort of setting an expectation. And I could probably do an entire video on expectation alone because expectation is very tricky. We're not going to not have expectations. We're human beings. We're going to have expectations. If we wake up every morning and the sun comes up, and I mean that even if it's raining, like it's just behind the clouds, you can see daylight, then we come to expect that that's going to happen every morning. That's just normal. That's just human nature. That's the way we function. So we can't not have expectations, but we can adjust our expectations. We can leave our expectations more open. We can say, okay, it might happen this way, it might happen this way, it might happen that way, and maybe form little backup plans for every possibility that you can think of. And when you do that, it sort of opens up expectations. So you're not expecting it too much or too fixated on that expectation. Because what happens when our expectations are not fulfilled? It's immediately followed by disappointment. And that's not what this is about. This is not the killer of your progress. That is a part of it. The real part of it that I'm talking about here, actually, before I get into it even more, let's talk about one more scenario, one other situation, and you'll probably start to get what I'm saying here. I have to warm you up. Like I said, I'm afraid of saying just coming right out and saying it, and then you running away. People who play the lottery. Now, okay, there's some people play the lottery just for fun. They're not expecting to win anything. Maybe they're already they're well off. Their bills are paid, no debt, et cetera, and they play the lottery. If that's what you're doing, have at it. Have fun with it. Right? That's the idea. You should have fun with it. But I don't think that that's the what drives most people to play the lottery. And I used to play the lottery at one time. I don't anymore. It's funny. Most people who are broke play the lottery. Kind of makes sense, but people who play the lottery instead of saving money for retirement, people who play the lottery instead of paying down their debts. Now, no one would come out and admit that, but it is surprising. They've done studies on this where people actually think, people who don't have a financial plan, people who aren't really saving much or not enough for their retirement, people who aren't paying down their debts, when they're asked, like, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to change your situation? Because you're walking in you're heading for retirement with nothing, and they will actually say things like, well, I'll win the lottery, and they're serious. Like, that's what they're thinking. So they're foregoing just doing the work and focus of saving and maybe making more money and doing more planning and paying down their debt. They have this little belief in the back of their mind that someday they're going to win the lottery. Where does that come from? Where does it come from? So I'll circle back to finish the story with my wingman. So I asked my wingman, like, what are you referring to? And he said he used to use the word bro a lot. I can hear his voice in my head. Bro. And he said, bro, Harvard educated, bro. You keep using that same word over and over. And I said, what word? And he said, hope. He said, you keep using that word hope. And I was like, well, what's wrong with that? And he said, you're totally sort of like offloading your responsibility here. And you're putting it off to, well, like, I hope things work out. I hope things go well. I hope I make more money. I hope I find a partner to share my life with. And if you think about it, you can even do this right now. Think about something you want, think about something you're working toward, and then say, I hope I get it versus I'm working toward what I want. I'm doing something about it. When you bring hope into it, you're actually disempowering yourself. You're making it seem like it's outside of your influence. You're outside of your agency. It's not your responsibility to make this happen. Now, some of you might be saying, no, that's not me. Oh, yes, it's you. We all do this to some extent. Now, before I get into the nitty gritty about hope, I want to warn you that I'm about to say some things that might make you feel hopeless, and that is not what I'm doing here. Okay. It's not about removing hope so that you feel hopeless, so that you do something about your situation. That hopelessness is not a resourceful state. So I'm not saying that at all. So keep that in mind. And what I'm going to give you is going to be much better than hopelessness or hope. Why do we lean on hope? In a world where there seems to be so much that is not within our control, and most of us haven't even really explored that either, how much is within our control or how much agency we have over what we do and how we feel, hope is easy to grab onto. It makes us feel good. But if you think about it, hope always implies coming from a place of hopelessness. If you didn't feel hopeless to some degree, you wouldn't reach for hope. Think about that. You would not even need hope if you were not feeling hopeless to some degree. And I'm not saying you're feeling hopeless in your entire life, but there are some areas, some situations in your life where you feel like you don't have any influence or agency over the situation. So instead of taking the time to figure out, okay, what can I do about this? What do I have control over? It's just so much easier to reach for hope. But what is that? What is that reaching for hope? What is it really? It's actually avoidance and denial. It's, I'm going to shortcut this thing instead of taking the time to understand this situation and do something about it. I'm going to jump ahead to this feeling that is what we call hope, but it's really should be called cope. This is how we cope with our hopelessness is by going to hope. It's a way to comfort ourselves. And actually, it's very similar to drugs and alcohol. It's more narcotic. Now, you might say, Damon, I know you a little bit, and I know you like wine because you talk about it a lot. And that is true. I do enjoy wine quite a bit. I live in California, have some of the best wine in the world here. But when it comes to drinking wine, I don't, that's not part of my strategy to get what I want out of life. That's just something I enjoy out of life. Hope is often the thing that we turn to when we feel hopeless about something, which is actually an opportunity to really grow, to really change something in our lives. Okay. So I don't reach for a glass of wine as a part of my strategy to live a fulfilling life. It's just something I enjoy. And we all need some things that we enjoy, even though they're not these long term plans and solutions um, to create our ideal selves and make our ideal life happen. It's okay to enjoy enjoy some of these things. So what I'm getting at is I'm not under the illusion that this somehow is going to help me do the things that I want to do in life. But actually a lot of people do approach hope that way. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. What hope really means is you're waiting for external circumstances to change rather than actively seeking to create the change. Now, this has a lot more to do with what's going on inside of you rather than what's going on outside of you. And if you become too fixated on what's going on externally and you think that that has control over you, and you start to believe that and you start to feed your energy and invest your energy and effort into that, trying to move the objects around you, trying to accumulate material possessions and that sort of thing, which there's nothing wrong with that other than it's not going to give you that fulfillment that you're really looking for. That has to come from inside first, and you create that change inside of you first, and then it has that extraordinary effect on the stuff that's happening around you. And that's not law of attraction. That's just, go inside of myself, take responsibility for what I need, what I am responsible for, and then that will affect change externally as it relates to me, not like world peace and that sort of thing. So hope is putting that expectation on external things that they're going to change. And like I said, when it comes to expectation, if your expectations aren't fulfilled, disappointment follows. And that's not going to help you progress either. So, like I said, hope feels better than hopelessness. So people choose hope because it's easy. And then that's where they usually stop. And if they stop there in hope, that's where progress stops as well. Because we're no longer taking responsibility for our progress. We're saying, I just hope it works out. I just hope that I have progress. So as soon as I say that, I disempower myself. I'm basically saying it's up to the world, the external circumstances, that sort of thing to figure it out for me, and I just hope it all works out. And this is one of my major problems with like things like the law of assumption and the law of attraction. There is a kernel of truth in both of those concepts that can work for you. But when you start talking about things like, well, it's the universe and I send it out to the universe and the universe turns around and and gives it back to me and that sort of stuff, like that is just being really arrogant to think that this big universe out there actually cares about these things. I mean, it's not that it wants you to do bad or anything like that. It doesn't want either way. The universe is kind of a cold, caring less careless kind of thing that's just sort of happening. It's not there to deliver what you want, like Amazon Prime. You visualize it and suddenly it arrives at your door. That's taking your responsibility away from making things happen in your life and creating the kind of change that you want. So here's the main thing that you can replace with hope that I promise you will work 100 times better. You will move your progress will jump 100 times faster than just sitting in hope and waiting that everything and just hoping that everything works out. And that is clarity about what you want. And so often when I mention this, people say, well, I'm not clear about what I want. And I say, welcome to the party. Like, we're all unclear to a certain extent about what we want. And it's a spectrum. It's a matter of how clear are you and how clear you are today about what you want is probably, even though it might not have, you're never going to have that total clarity that a lot of people think of. It's sort of like this standard or ideal that's perfection. Oh, well, when I'm completely clear about what I want, then I'll act on it. No, 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 no. That's not how this works. Clarity comes around because you take action. You can only figure out so much in your head and get clear about it. You can only figure it out so much when you journal about it, which I highly recommend. Journaling is very good about getting clear, not only about what you want, but just sort of understanding problems and things like that. It's a great exercise, but you can only figure out so much on paper. You can only figure out so much in your head. The thing that really helps you figure things out and get clear about it is action. And that's why in the scientific method, it's about experimentation. It's about experiments. If everything about science was all about trying to think it through and journal about it and we never did scientific experiments, we would be so unclear about so many things. So it's that experimentation that creates the clarity. Nothing creates clarity better than that. And so what that means for you is taking action. Now I know we're so afraid of failing at anything, and that's also a branch of hope. Well, I hope it works out. I hope that okay, drop the hope. I'm not saying be hopeless, but drop the hope and say, I'm just going to try this thing out because I'm trying to figure out what do I want. And if you start getting into the hope part of that, again, it's going to block you from taking action. So what you can also add to this equation is curiosity. Curiosity is a wonderful value, and it's also a wonderful resource that we all have. And don't tell me you don't have curiosity. We all have curiosity. It's inside of us. And the more you follow that curiosity, the more curious you will become. And that sort of becomes its own motivation. So be curious about your potential at the very least. Be curious about your potential and be curious about the progress you could make. Be curious about the progress you could make by dropping hope and not relying on hope. Hope just gets in the way. Now, part of working this out, part of it is understanding your values, and I would also say that clarity is a value, curiosity is a value, and when you're wanting something, or when you want to be more clear about what you want, which is what the more clear you are about it, that's what creates motivation. A lot of people think of motivation as this sort of like something that just kind of floats around and then every once in a while it might bless you and then it disappears. No, you can have agency over your motivation. It's about clarity. Now, you might say, well, I'm clear that I want $1 million, but I'm not very motivated to go after it. Well, that's probably because what you're not clear about is how to get it. If it's just kind of floating out there, and you go, yeah, I want that $1 million, I just don't know how to get it. That's when you start playing the lottery. But if you take the time to get clear about what it would take to make that $1 million, I guarantee you wouldn't be able to sit still. You would get off the couch and you would go for it. And you can also be curious at the same time. I wonder what it does take to do this. So it's very important to understand your values, and that is something you can work out on paper. And in fact, you'll find in the description of this video a values elicitation PDF you can download and do lots of values elicitations. Do values elicitations on every major context of your life. Get clear about what you want in every major context of your life by eliciting your values. And what that does for you, that will connect you with your motivation, because anything that you want to accomplish, any decision you make, every behavior you do is driven by a value, or usually more than one, a set of values that you want to, values that you want to fulfill. So, like money, just having numbers or green paper, that's not what's driving you to want money. It's the value you want to fulfill by having that money. So, understanding your values sets your sights beyond the object or the accomplishment that you desire and connects you to that motivation. And then that is, as long as you stay connected to those values, you're never going to run out of motivation. So let's get back to talking about hope, because that is the number one thing I can comfortably say that that is the number one thing that is blunting your progress. It numbs your motivation. It numbs your curiosity because it creates dependency. It's really more a distraction than anything else. It's something you depend on because it's a good feeling that you're knee jerk reacting. It's a knee jerk reaction to feeling hopeless. And nobody wants to feel hopeless. It's a terrible feeling. We've all felt it. So we knee jerk reaction to a better feeling, which we call hope. And I would say, if that's what you need to kind of pull yourself out of the hole and get you to the next place, then I would say that's okay. But that's not typically what I see happening for people. They end up staying in hope and just say, oh, well, I hope it works out. And I feel better because I don't feel as hopeless as I did before, but I hope it works out. And then what happens is, ever stay in a bad situation for too long? Anytime you're staying in a bad situation for too long, I assure you, you can blame it on your hope. Because if we're in a bad situation for too long, what that implies is you're not doing anything to change it, or you can't do anything to change it. So why would you stay in that situation? Because you hope it gets better. You're hoping it gets better. That's what's keeping you there. If you drop the hope and you say, you get real with this, and you say, okay, is there anything that I can do to change this situation? Hope will distract you away from getting that clarity. But if you move hope out, then you can get clear about the truth. Can I actually change this situation? If you can, then get right to it. If you can't, then get out of that situation. There's no reason to stay there. But if you keep hoping, then you'll wait and you'll stay in that bad situation for too long. And I don't hear enough people talking about opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is the thing you miss out on by making a different choice. So you got three choices: A, B, and C. If you choose A, the opportunity cost is B and C. You can't choose B and C because you're busy with A. You know, that's where you go. If you're staying in a bad situation for too long because you're mired in hope, what are you missing out on? You're missing out on fulfilling your potential. More specifically, you're missing out on the progress you could be making. So opportunity cost is a real thing, and it's more expensive than money. Opportunity cost could be money, but the bigger thing that opportunity cost is time. Time is more valuable than money because, and I know you heard this before, I'm not the first person to say it. I'm not trying to take credit for this. You can make more money. You cannot make more time. Once the time is spent, you're not getting it back. But a lot of us live thinking that we don't actually consciously think this, but we unconsciously think we have unlimited time, that we're going to live forever. Try selling life insurance. You'll see most people actually live into that presupposition. I have unlimited time. I'm never going to die. That's I promise you, life is so much more fun, fulfilling, and interesting and engaging when you accept your mortality and realize that you have unlimited time. I mean, that you have limited time. Sorry. All right. Now, think about this too. You ever thought about, you hear this a lot now in personal development, they're sort of appropriating the hero's journey into personal development. And that's right up my alley because I started in film. Went to film school. I studied storytelling. I studied screenwriting, and I got real familiar with the hero's journey. And the hero's journey is basically a process for how we grow and develop and transform. And it's divided into three acts typically. It doesn't have to be. And it's divided into, I think it was Joseph Conrad, not Joseph Conrad, Joseph Campbell. I think he came up with 12 points of the hero's journey. He had studied legends and stories throughout all over the world, different cultures, and they all kind of followed this hero's journey, this 12-step journey. That's why it's so internal. It's part of who we are. And at the end of the second act, which then carries over into the third act, there's one thing that has to happen to the hero before they can move on to the third act. They have to lose hope. They have to lose hope. They have to lose hope because that's hope has been the thing that they're typically running on up until this point to some extent, not fully. But this idea of maybe I can make a difference, maybe I can make this change, maybe I can change my life, this transformation. But the hero's journey, inevitably, what happens is the hero is lured in by something he or she wants, and so he or she goes chasing it. That's what carries you, and that's what carries the hero into the second act. But by the end of the second act, the hero has to lose all hope that they can get it. One of the greatest examples of this was the very first Rocky, when Rocky realizes the night before the fight he cannot beat Apollo Creed. All this training that he's been doing leads up to him realizing, I can't beat Apollo Creed. I cannot beat the champion. And in losing that hope, he shifts into something different. And this is where the transformation happens. He says, I just don't want to go down. I want to I want to go the distance with the champ. No one has ever done that. And so he readjusts his expectations to something more realistic, something that seems out of reach for most people, or pretty much anyone, because no one has done it. But he believes in himself for once that he can do it. And so he goes after it. And if you haven't seen this movie, it was in the 70s, so I don't think I'm really spoiling much here. He goes the distance with the champ. The Matrix, one of my favorite set of movies. I know most people are into Star Wars. Matrix was my thing. When Neo, at the first movie, he's not sure if he's the one. They keep saying the one. He's kind of hoping he is, kind of not sure, and he's not sure of his place. And then when Morpheus is willing to give his life for him, he's like, "Oh no, we can't do this because I'm not really the one." And so, in letting go of his hope of whatever, returning to some sort of normality, he steps up and he becomes the hero and makes a great sacrifice. He's willing to sacrifice himself because of this person who wants to sacrifice themselves for him. So it's even in the hero's journey that in order to transform, in order to get to that next level, you have to lose hope. But again, it's not about being hopeless, right? It's about finding something new. It's about replacing hope. If you're afraid to let go of hope, this comes up in our values elicitations when I teach a lot. When I teach values elicitation to my students, or when I'm working with a one-on-one client. Hope will often come up as one of their values. And this is what I mean by people holding it sacred. They think that that hope is something sacred, but it's not. It's like I said, it's more narcotic than it is anything else. But hope will come up as a value. What is a value? A value is a generalization about an experience that's important to you. You've had happy experiences, so you generalize. I like being happy. I want to have more happy experiences. Happiness is important to me. So that happiness is then a value. Well, what do you think happens when you value hope? It's basically saying I value disempowering myself. I value having expectations about the external world, but without taking any responsibility for that. Now, if we get back to the core of what is driving that, driving us to seek hope and to cling to it and even try to make it something sacred, it really comes down to a deep fear of hopelessness. We are trying to avoid hopelessness because, yeah, it feels terrible. It's not good for progress. But is it either hopelessness or hope? That's what we call an either or in NLP. It's it's part of the meta model actually. When people speak in terms of like binary terms of either or, well, either you're hopeless or you're filled with hope, you're hopeful. But there's always something in the middle or something outside of that duality. That's what I would call it. I spend a lot of time in non-duality. Hope is just an idea. If you don't have hope, and I don't mean that as you're hopeless, I'm just saying you don't depend on hope, you just don't entertain the idea, the concept of hope, you're still the same person. You're still the same person if you have this idea or not, or if you carry this idea with you or not. You still wake up every morning, still you, whether or not you have it. So we have this great fear of losing something by letting go of hope, but you're not really losing anything. You do not need hope to fulfill your potential. You do not need hope to make progress. And in fact, that's what's getting in your way. So remember, hope is a dependency, which disempowers you. And what you can do instead is just step out of that polarity, step out of that duality of hope or hopelessness. Just step out of it. And what you can do then is you can engage in life more without that buffer of hope or hopelessness. And you can become so engaged and so proactive in your life that you don't have time for hope. It doesn't. It's not necessary. It's not something you do not send your attention and your effort in that direction. It's just not necessary. It's just a distraction. You can replace hope, like I said, with curiosity. You can replace hope with clarity. You can replace hope with assertiveness and acceptance, acceptance of how things are, acceptance of your limitations, acceptance of other people. Now, acceptance doesn't mean passivity. It doesn't mean don't do anything, just sit around and accept it and just be okay with it. When you accept, then you can act, then you can solve problems, then you can engage in life. You have to accept a problem, that there is a problem, before you can solve it. So, acceptance is a wonderful place to start. Only by accepting what's outside of your control can you truly focus on what's within your control. All right. Before I get into, I will look at questions or comments if somebody, if anyone has any questions or comments. Please go ahead and start typing them now. I will take a look. So just remember a few things here. Clarity about what you want is your motivation. Clarity, not hope. And allow your curiosity to reveal your potential. Get curious about what progress you can make. Get curious about what potential you can fulfill. And, instead of attaching so much of like self worth and stuff like that to failing or succeeding, step outside of all that noise and just get curious. Beware the narcotic effects of hope. When you feel yourself moving in this direction, know that it comes from a feeling of hopelessness. Anytime you start entertaining hope, know that that's your reaction to hopelessness, whether you're feeling hopeless or you're afraid of hopelessness. Either one is not good. So get clear about what you have control over and what you don't. Connect with your values, take action. If having hope makes you feel better about the things you can't change, okay, we can maybe accept that to start, because there's things like, I hope for world peace someday. I hope for all the wars in the world to stop. Why not? I mean, I don't have any effect over that. I can't control that, right? So I can hope that, not a big deal. I hope that poverty, prejudice, all those things end one day. But at the same time, I'm not setting my expectations on that, because I don't think, you know, if that happens, great. I would celebrate that. But at the same time, if it doesn't, you know, I'm not going to be so disappointed, because I'm not setting my expectations there. You do not want to do this in your personal life, though, because when it comes to your progress in that you want, anything that you want to be better at, hope is only going to get in your way. So start recognizing it, be conscious of it, be aware of it, know where it's coming from, and stop investing in it. Drop it. Again, I want to make sure that you understand that I'm not advocating hopelessness. Not at all. That's not going to help anything. Uh, I would say hope is a little bit better than hopelessness, but not that much. All right. I'm not seeing any comments or questions, so I am going to close things out right there. Okay. I will probably do another one of these, not about hope, but about something else in about 2 weeks. Of course, I'll have another video coming out this coming Wednesday. And if you haven't checked out my video from last Wednesday, definitely check that out. It's about getting unstuck, um, which, happens to us all. So let's get unstuck. All right. Take care, everybody.